Hey guys, what's going on? It's Blayde again from Car Audio Security. Now we've got something a little bit different for you today. We're going to be showing you how to basic wire up a sub and amp in your vehicle. So what we've got here today is some products from Phoenix Gold and Stinger. To give you an example of what we're going to use, this is a twin 10-inch passive shallow enclosure from Phoenix Gold. We're going to use their micro mono amp, and we're using a Stinger 8-gauge wiring kit. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to install this into the Shop EP3 Civic. So I'm going to run through everything with you, what you would do as a basic install. Now bear in mind, I'm not a professional installer, so please don't have a go at me if I've done something wrong, but I'm going to show you the basis of what you need to do, the important stuff to remember. And yeah, so let's get downstairs, take these products with us, and let's get installing. We've got all the equipment here ready to go. So just to show you what you're basically going to need for the install process. Obviously we've got your wiring kit and the amp. We're going to open that in a second and show you what's involved with that. But other parts you're going to need, screwdriver most likely you're going to need for most cars. This is just a Phillips head. You might need some flat heads or Torx bits depending on what vehicle you've got. Cloth tape, this is just so you can neaten stuff up, make it look nice and neat, and just protect the wires as well. Trim removal tools, very, very important. Make sure you have something like this to get trims off. That way you're not going to be scratching and gouging any plastic trims you've got in the vehicle. Some sort of crimping tool and some sort of stripping tool. So you can strip your wires, crimp your wires. You will need bullet terminals and bits and bobs like that, but we'll get into that in a second. But with the wiring kit, let's open it up and see kind of what you get in there. You've got a few parts that come inside the bag here. So this is your 8-gauge power cable. It does have a ring terminal on one end, so that end's probably going to be your battery side. This is your earth or ground cable. Again, ring terminal on one side. This is only 1 meter long. Now, I've seen a few people earthing back to the battery from the amp. Not a good idea. You need a nice short earth to the chassis of the vehicle. Now remember, the chassis of the car is an earth. The whole thing is an earth, so, or a ground, whatever you want to call it. So you don't need it to be more than 1 meter long. You have some speaker cable here. This is going to be pretty good for anything up to, I'd say, 500 watts RMS. There'll probably be about 5 meters of this as well, nicely tangled with this cable. Okay, so speaker cable. Again, you've got about 5 meters. We're not going to need that much because we're literally just going from our amp to our sub, and I'm planning on putting the amp in the boot somewhere. But this is 16 gauge, will be pretty good for any subwoofer up to, say, 400-500 watts RMS. Don't really need anything much more than that. You can obviously upgrade this if you want to, but that's what we're going to use. This is your remote cable. So this is what's going to basically send a triggered 12 volts to turn the amp on. Obviously this power cable is going to be a constant 12 volts from your battery, and this is obviously your earth cable. This is so that your amp turns on and off with your stereo or with your car. And then you have your RCA cables. Again, 5 meters. This is to run from the back of the head unit on the sub pre-out to the amplifier. So you're going to run that as well. You also have your fuse holder and the fuse. The stock setup in this bag comes with a 60 amp fuse. Just make sure that's correct for the amp that you're installing. Okay, bit of a mess on the side here, but we'll clean it up in a second. Lastly, you have a few other bits. So you've got some zip ties, some terminals. So you've got some fork terminals to go into your amplifier, and you've got a joiner as well for most likely your remote cable. So they're just spares if you need them. Now onto the amp. This is the Phoenix Gold ZXM 500.1. 500.1 means it's 500 watts RMS at 1 ohm. And the .1 is basically, it's a 1-channel amp, the mono amp. So inside, you've got your instructions manual. You have a bass controller with this. So that's the bass controller itself, and the extension wire to go from the amplifier to the controller itself. You've got screws and an Allen key. And believe it or not, this is the amp. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. Like that's the size of it in the palm of my hand. So we're not going to have any issues trying to find a place for this to hide away. But still a powerhouse, 500 watt RMS is pretty good. Obviously this is going to be running on the twin 10, which is a 2 ohm. So this is going to be giving, I think, 360 RMS, is that correct? 360 watts RMS at 2 ohm. The amp's, the sub is rated at 350, so perfectly fine. Lastly, you have the RCA input plug. So this will plug into the amp here, and then you can run your RCAs, these cables here, they plug into there, and then obviously that gets the signal from your head unit. So that's pretty much it. So I think I'm gonna crack on with installing it now. First thing you need to think about is getting under the bonnet. You need to run your cable from your battery to the back, so you need to find a way through the bulkhead. That's usually the most painful part of the job, I'll be honest. So let's pop the bonnet and we'll find a place to go. Right, so obviously bonnet's up. First thing you need to do, obviously, locate your battery. Battery's right here. Obviously your positive side is right here. So we need to figure out a way to get through to the inside of the car. So what I'm thinking is, obviously your positive side is here. We do have a grommet right at the back here. I'm not sure if you can see that. So I'm thinking if we can find the other end of that wire that's down there, I'm hoping that we can then poke a wire through. What we are going to need to make life a lot easier pushing the cable through is some sort of long wire rod. So we've got some here, which we use for our installs. So what we would do is obviously poke this through the grommet, and then that way we can find it on the other side. And then when we know it's come through, we can tape our cable around it, push that through, and then you can grab the cable at the other end. So, because obviously if the cable's very flimsy, it's difficult to push something through a grommet. So that's a lot easier doing it that way. If you've got a coat hanger at home or something that you can destroy to make something like this, absolutely fine. Right, so with a little bit of fettling, managed to poke the wire through, as you can see, just sticking out the bottom there. So now what we can do is if we come back around this side, we've got a bit of wire sticking out here. So if I can grab my power cable, and you want to obviously don't tape up that side because that's the side you want to keep in the engine bay. You want to take this side up to here, wrap some tape around it, and you can pull it through. And then that way you can just run your cable nice and easy. So let's take that up quickly. As you can see, you've got more than enough cable in. This is generic wiring kit. Most of these will come with the same amount of cable. You've got more than enough. So let's leave that there. And what we'll do, we'll finish up under the bonnet and then that's done. So what we need to do is obviously we need to connect our ring terminal to our battery post. But obviously, very important, we need our fuse. So our fuse holder is here. You need to make sure that your fuse holder is within, I'd say at least no longer, than a foot away from your battery post. So ideally what I can do is I can push it down the side there. So if I get enough cable back through, that can go down the side and we can run the cable and make that look nice and neat. All right, so what I'm going to do is just cut the cable here, so then that way we can run basically our fuse holder in the middle of that. So then that can just sit behind there. I'll find a spot for that to be secured in. So let's give that a cut. There we go. Okay, so our short part of the cable is going to be going into here. So you just need to remember to put that through. I mean, it won't go over there, but that's going to go into that little casing there. I'm going to tighten this down. There you go. So that looks a lot better now. We've got that little plastic rubbery thing in there. Now this is going to go here. I'll just check I've got enough space to run that down there. Yeah, plenty of space. And then I can zip tie that. It's going to go there like that. Right. The reason why it's good to do this first is if you need more cable, you can just pull it through. All right, so And then we can grab our screwdriver and our 2 little bits. So we'll want that on first, like that on next, going that way. We want our strippers. We don't need to attach that yet, that's ready to go. I can then pull some of that back through and then tidy that up later. So next thing we need to do is run this to the back. So in the boot, to get out of the boot floor. Let's put this over here. So what I'm planning on is to put the amp back here, so I'll get the spare wheel out in a bit, but let's start running that cable. So we need to get these trims off the side, that trim, and then possibly need to take the rear bench out, but we'll see. Okay, so after a bit of sweating, I've got the side trims off and the rear bench out. Side trims are mainly just clips that hold them in. Rear bench is pull up from the bottom, and behind the center part of the bench there is a little 10mm, which took me a while to find that. But there's a little 10mm that holds the whole thing in. You take that 10mm out and the whole rear bench will come out, so that's just sat over there. So now I'm going to start running the cable down the channel, which, I mean, in this car there's not much of a channel, so I might even go under the carpet. Make my life a bit easier, but I'll run it over and then we can get it through into the boot. So let's get this done. Okay, so we've run the power cable after a bit of sweating. It's very hot outside today, so but I've run power cable underneath all of the channels, underneath the carpet, and then run it up into the boot. And if you come into the boot, you'll see put these grommets in here, and it's coming out through this grommet. And then I'm planning on mounting the amp here. So what we need to do next is take the head unit out, plug in the RCAs, wire in the remote cable, and then I'm gonna have to run that down the other side. So let's get that done. What I'm doing right now is running my remote and my RCAs, just looming them up together. You don't have to loom them like this, but I would just recommend taping them every like 30 centimeters or whatever, because they're pretty much going to the same point. They're both behind the head unit and both at the amp, so putting them together just makes life easier. You're just running essentially one cable. So I'm just looming it up so it looks nice and neat, and then it is protected as well. It doesn't take too long to do this. These are your RCAs. They're going to be plugged into your pre-outs on the back of the head unit, so just make sure whatever you're using them for, in this case it's going to be for a sub, you plug it into the right ports. This is going to be plugged into the sub port, so just it'll be labelled on the back of the head unit. And then I need to wire in the remote, which when I installed the head unit I actually did myself a favour. I already put a female bullet terminal on the remote output of that head unit, so that way I just need to put a male bullet on here, try and feed the wires through, get it to the back, put it all back together. There's a little blanking plate to the right hand side of the steering wheel, which I'm going to incorporate the bass controller that comes with this. So what I'm going to do is, because this comes off, I'm going to try and take this casing out and then mount it inside here, drill a little hole, so all you can see is, grab it, that, and then that will be your bass controller. So I've got really dirty hands, but that's how it's going to look. Last thing we need to do is run the earth cable. So where I'm going to mount the amp, I've got an earth right next to it, and the bolt I've picked out threads directly into it and it's not attached to anything. So I'm going to rub this down with a bit of sandpaper to make sure it's a clean surface for the earth to strap to. And yeah, we can wire it all in. I've just got to do the board and then we can mount the amp. Okay, so the last part of the install is just connecting your power cable to your positive terminal on your battery. So just doing that now. Just gonna take that 10mm nut all the way off the battery terminal. Longest bolt in the world. Okay guys, so it's actually now the next day, as you can probably see by my change of clothes. I ran out of time, I got pulled into the shop, so yeah, it's the next day, but we are done. So where we left off, I was just tidying up the wiring in the engine bay. So we've hooked up the power, tidied up the cabling in the engine bay, and if you want to follow me around, we have it fitted. So this is it, it's nice and small, obviously a nice Phoenix Gold logo on it. But yeah, this is designed to fire downwards, so that's how the subs play. Obviously the speaker cable goes into that part of the box, so just in there, and then you can fire it downwards. You can fire it upwards if need be, but these tend to reproduce a little bit better if they're firing downwards. So should we have a listen? Okay, so let's try and get this mirror to shake. I'm going to do 50 Hertz, seems to be quite strong there. Yeah, let's try and get this mirror to go. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. We're finished. So the sub is installed, it's all working perfectly fine. So on the next episode, we're gonna go through the basic setup of tuning it. Now obviously I've roughly set it up by hand and by ear, but there is a particular way that you can tune this, and I can show you how to do it at the amp and at the head unit to get the best sound possible out of the sub and the speakers as well. Okay guys, so that is it from me. Make sure you like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.